Today, I'm going to talk to you out of both sides of my mouth. On one side, I'm going to talk to those of you who are ages 19 to 29, still receiving some form of support from your parents. Turns out, that is most of you. According to a 2018 Merrill Lynch and AgeWave study of 2,500 participants, 79% of you are still dependent upon some form of support from your parents. That dependency is delaying your launch to independent adulthood. Now, you're over 18, so legally that makes you an adult, but you're not quite independent. You're in between. You are emerging. You are what is known as an emerging adult, EA for short. On the other side, I'm going to talk to the parents of EAs, the PEAs, the Ps. Ps, we have got to stop overprogramming, pushing, and paying for too much for our EAs. We have got to stop parenting and start promoting. I get it. I am a stereotypical P. EAs, don't hate. Ps, I bet this is your story. When my daughters were younger, I enrolled them in the best schools I could find. I got them tutors and coaches and private lessons of all kinds. EAs, I bet this is your story too. My youngest played competitive volleyball for 10 years. That was 2 years too long. She suffered emotionally from depression and physically from overuse injuries. I pushed her when I should have let her quit. She pushed herself academically, enrolling in math classes beyond her natural ability, draining her of energy and wasting time. By the time my daughters graduated high school, they ended up burned out, wiped out, and nearly tapped out. Turns out we were not alone, and this pattern continues. As a marriage and family therapist, I work with stressed out EAs. Kendra had been a successful student her entire academic career when she was mandated for counseling her senior year of college. She came into my office and asked to sit in my chair, which sent me to the couch. You see, Kendra had been programmed and pushed throughout her life to achieve something. She suspected the real goal of our sessions was to prevent an increase in the school's dropout or worse, suicide rate. The last question she would entertain was, what are you going to do when you graduate? We talked about art and social justice, but never about what was really going on. Until one day she threw me a little bone. She said she thought all that mattered was competition and getting good grades and getting a job. In fact, she was worried that she would compound this competitive culture by getting better grades than her sister had, which would mean she would succeed at her sister's expense. I suggested she drop out. She looked at me like I was crazy. EAs need love and connection at ground zero as we navigate this launch together. My daughters are EAs, and I am giving them a promotion. Pro means positive, loving, and supportive. Motion means forward moving, and the pace and direction is on the EA. I am promoting them, not fixing, not rescuing, and not controlling. If we parents continue to overprogram, push, and pay, we will delay the period of emerging adulthood. Parents and EAs must differentiate and stay connected at the same time. What an oxymoronic challenge. Parents must differentiate by learning to manage their launch anxiety and stay within their own zone of responsibility. When the pandemic began, my daughter was in Brazil for her semester abroad. She was taking business courses, picking up her fourth language, and dancing the samba at Carnival. When the borders started closing, all but 2 students in her cohort evacuated. I became anxious. I wanted her to study at home online, not from her apartment in Brazil. I resisted pulling the "I pay for this" card, or scaring her with statistics in my favor, or worse, the good old mom guilt. If we want our EAs to become independent, we must empower them. We must learn to tolerate anxiety and stay within our zone of responsibility. I work with parents who struggle to stay within their zone of responsibility. David strained his second marriage for 2 years paying for his son's lifestyle post-college graduation. He was holding out for that parent brag that his son might land that status job. Mona began liquidating her IRA to protect her daughter's credit score. The credit score was not the problem. Charles wrote college papers. Anne paid for legal fees, all to avoid failure for their EAs. Whose failure were they really avoiding? Parents have been lying and cheating, robbing their EAs of critical life lessons, and worse, instilling a fear in their EAs that they are not acceptable if they fail. Parents, this is not your life. EAs, now is the time for you to stop making everyone else happy. Your success is not because of your parents, nor is your failure. Now is the time for you to differentiate and stand on your own. Trust your gut. Trust yourself. Know if you fail, you can course correct and rise again. My daughter wanted to stay in Brazil. She stepped up. She assumed responsibility for her zone. She determined the safe places she would go, the company she would keep, and the mask she would wear. She learned to manage anxiety through challenges, failures, and disappointments, even when she had not been given direction. EAs, you must set your own standard for success. EAs, this is your life. Promotion occurs in the zone of effectiveness. This is where the two differentiated zones overlap and where the parent does just enough to help their EA motivate and move on. Parents can provide enough financial support without jeopardizing their own retirement. EAs can ask for help or guidance without relying solely upon it. Parents can promote their EAs by maintaining calm in the face of failure, doing a lot of listening and asking empowering questions such as, "What are your thoughts?" or "What can you do?" Parents are positive and supportive. EAs are independent and empowered. Both must tolerate anxiety. Both must take risks. The future is a vision, not a given. Parenting an EA is incremental, not linear. Parents and society have been skipping the basics for more advanced lessons. EAs may need guidance with money management, credit cards, insurance, or getting an interim job. When Beth came to my office for help promoting her son, she was at her wit's end. She had spent his entire childhood and adolescence hiring tutors and therapists to help manage his anxiety and ADHD. With her by his side, every support system had been set for his success. Now, at 27, Peter had dropped out of college, was nominally employed, and was still dependent upon his parents for some form of support. He was without health insurance and was threatened with utility cutoff because he couldn't figure out how to pay his gas bill. Now, it wasn't Beth's fault. She had been doing what she thought was right. In fact, her parenting had been effective with one of her children, just not this one. Same ingredients, different cake. We had to go back to basics. We had to define Beth's area of responsibility, Peter's zone of responsibility, and what could be done in the zone of effectiveness. Beth stopped overstepping her bounds. She recalibrated her goals and began promoting her son. She engaged in the zone of effectiveness and very simply said, "Pay your gas bill, Peter." Then she stepped back. Peter stepped forward. He paid his gas bill. He emerged further. He figured out how to get insurance on his own. The months without health insurance and the threat of utility cutoff were high anxiety for both Peter and Beth. We all must learn to tolerate the remedial step. Parents and EAs find themselves in parallel universes as we launch into the new era together. Remember Kendra, the college student I had told to drop out of school? Well, my paradoxical counseling intervention worked. She didn't drop out. In fact, she graduated with the exact same GPA as her sister, defeating the competitive culture where one person wins and the other loses. Kendra has moved on. She is emerging on her own path to independent adulthood. After all, there is no grade for real life. My eldest is 26. She has a full-time job with benefits, her own apartment, and pays for 90% of her own way. My youngest, 22, is still abroad. Our bank accounts are still connected, but she lives within a very tight budget. She is learning to manage her own life. And if I want to promote her, I need to empower her. We discussed what would happen during the pandemic. We both needed to tolerate anxiety and take risks. Parents, we must stop overprogramming, pushing, and paying for our EAs. It's time to start promoting. I don't always follow my own professional advice, but when I do, I tell the world about it.